Freddy?
Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to another discussions video. And welcome to what might possibly be the last rewrite video I'm doing for quite a bit of time. Because honestly, there really isn't much left for me to rewrite, and I've been doing these for quite a bit of time. I'm kind of just getting near the end, and what better way to round out our sort of rewrite era of the channel by rewriting the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, with the fact that the FNAF 2 movie is coming up in less than a month as well. So I think it's quite good timing on that. So with that, there's really not much else to do on this intro. We're just going to be rewriting the movie, and I'll kind of talk more about that, in the actual video itself. So without further ado, let's get into the video. And before we do, don't forget to like, subscribe, do the whole kit caboodle, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, let's do this. So to honor the fact that this might be the last rewrite video I do indefinitely, I think it's best for the recap and rules section to not only recap the movie, but for the first time in a long time, actually have some rules that I'm supposed to follow. So basically, if you don't know the recap and rules section, I just recap stuff from, well, for this instance, the movie, and then I go over a few different rules or bits of information that pertain to the video that I'll need to follow while doing my rewrite, because I can't just rewrite the entire thing to be completely different than the movie itself. There's obviously got to be some level of rules and standards that I need to follow when rewriting the movie. So we'll get into all of that here, and to start, we'll kind of just recap the movie. And I've actually rewatched it kind of recently, so I remember most of it on hand. So we'll just kind of do a quick little recap here, and then we'll talk about some things that I liked and I didn't like from the movie. So to give it a quick recap, you have Mike Schmidt and his sister Abby, and they're kind of just living life. He's working as a security guard at the mall. It's like 2000 or something like that, and he gets in a bit of a scuffle. He loses his job. He meets Steve Raglan, aka William Afton, who gives him a job at Freddy Fazbear's, and so then he eventually works there. There's some more things with like Aunt Jane trying to steal away Abby for money or something like that. She's like a comedically evil villain. She's like, "Mwahaha, if I was, an evil cartoonish villain, I'd be twirling this mustache, but I don't have one, so I can't." She's just like a cartoonish villain. And that's sort of like the B plot. Mike works at Freddy's. He meets the animatronics. He meets Vanessa, who turns out to be William's daughter. There's the whole, the robots are the kids, and then they build a fort, and then Bonnie gives a thumbs up, and then eventually it's revealed that they actually work for William Afton, and then they try to kill Abby, and then they try to kill Mike, and then William Afton shows up. There's a big fight at the end. Vanessa does her whole "that's two things," and then William Afton is like, "Yeah, I don't like that. I'm gonna stab you." And then it turns out that Abby reveals to all the ghost kids and the robots that William Afton killed them. And then he does his little like spiel, and then he gets spring locked, and he's like, "I always come back," and then he gets spring locked some more, and then the movie ends. A completely good recap right there. I'm sure you guys understood all of that perfectly. We'll go into a little bit more detail when this next section, when I'm talking about things that I liked and I didn't like. So let's get into that and kind of focus in some more on the movie itself and some more specific points. Things that I liked from the movie. On the whole, I actually kind of enjoyed it. There's obviously things that I think could be better, but nothing will beat that theater experience, going with my friend David and just watching that for the first time. Man, it was fun. I had a great time. There was parts that were funny that probably weren't supposed to be funny, but I was laughing at them anyway. It was great. I enjoyed it, and it was a fun watch. Upon rewatches though, because I've seen it about 3 times now, which, like, as a FNAF fan is probably shockingly low, but I've seen it about 3 times now, and kind of going back and zooming in on things, I can pinpoint the specific stuff that I think worked good and that I really liked, and the few things that I think the movie's kind of fallen flat on as a whole. So to focus in on those things that I liked, probably the best part of the movie was the ending. For the most part, we'll get into that and the things I didn't like, but the ending itself I think wasn't bad. particularly when Springtrap shows up. I think that's when things get great. I mean, he's not Springtrap yet, but like, I don't know what to call him. He's not Spring Bonnie, whatever. When William Afton shows up, that's when things are like really cool, because his entrance is like super cool. There's a crazy music playing. He like beats up Mike. It's super cool. And I think on the whole, the ending is pretty dang good. You get the animatronic suits are great as always. Matthew Lillard, amazing actor, so he does a great job there. And I think all of the confrontations, all the character arcs, all kind of lead to this point, and it works really well. So I think the ending on the whole is pretty good. And then, you know, the whole building collapses. I think the best scene is the very end, when he's like in the back area and he's like sticking his hand out to be like, come help me. And then they close the door and he's like, oh, dang it. I like that part. So I think the ending of the movie was pretty good. And then kind of just some more general things. I kind of briefly brought it up, but the animatronic suits in the movie are amazing. I love them. They're great. I think my favorite is probably Foxy, because the other ones are very obviously just people in suits, which makes sense because they're people in suits. But I like Foxy because he's like actually puppeteered and he looks great. Foxy's probably the best part of the movie, at least like animatronic wise, the best part of the movie, because he looks so great moving around and he's actually like an animatronic and he's not just a guy in a suit. So I think he looks really cool. So the robots on the whole are great and I love their designs. And I guess kind of in that too, like the set itself, pretty much all practical. I think it's all practical actually. Probably there's some minor stuff from like exterior shots that are digitally enhanced, but I think interior wise the sets are all practical. It looks great. I love it. The practicality of this movie is amazing. Moving into kind of the last general thing that I liked, the characters. I actually kind of enjoyed pretty much all of the characters. Even some of the goofy ones like Aunt Jane were pretty like funny. I liked the lawyer dude. Like, he's pretty stupid, but I liked him. He was kind of funny. I think on the whole though, the movie was great, and like the characters in the like actors and all that kind of stuff did a great job in the movie, and I think it was pretty good. But with that being said, there are some things that I think could have been done better, and we'll move into that now. Starting with the William Springlock scene. This one, a ton of people don't like. I'm kind of in the middle on. I think that there were points that they could have made it really great, but they fell flat on just a little bit. For me, the Springlock scene in the movie is kind of like Scrap Trap. I don't hate it as much as other people do, and I think it's actually not bad, but I'm also not blind to the fact that there are issues with it that I think could be improved. For example, you know, there's not a whole lot of screaming, and there ain't a whole lot of like, I'm being springlocked. He's kind of just like, ooh, this is mildly uncomfortable. Like, it's like me at work being like, ow, I think I freaking pulled a muscle. Well, I guess I gotta keep working. Like, he's just kind of chilling. Like, it doesn't seem like it's that bad for him. And then he does the stupidest thing when he's like, I always come back. And, you know, he puts the helmet on. Obviously, nothing against Matthew Lillard because he's just acting the scene. I think that's the writing. Why does he say that? It's really stupid. They only had him say that because that's his iconic quote. I think it's dumb. And I think that the scene could have been done a lot better because there are points in it that I think really work. And obviously, I'll talk about later on when I'm going through the main story rewrite. But I think the Springlock scene left much to be desired. Kind of a more general point, which is like the next one here, is the movie itself isn't very scary. Like, not at all. There were a few points that I think could have been cool. For example, I liked the part where the one guy's like in the kitchen area and he's like hearing Mr. Cupcake in the fridge. And then in the background, you see Chico walk past like the fan or whatever. Like, it's not focused on, it's not like the center of attention. You just see her in the background. I think that kind of builds things up of like, you notice something off and it's kind of like eerie and suspenseful, but it still could have been done better because it's really not scary. Like, he turns around and he's like, oh, it's Chica standing there. And then they give you like a 10-second wind up before the cupcake jump scares him. It's not scary. And other parts of the movie really aren't. I mean, you have the Bonnie where he's in the closet and the guy turns the light on and it's like, he's right behind me, isn't he? It's not very scary, like, at all. I think the closest you get is like night 5 when they show up there, and like, that's really about it. I do think, actually, you know, thinking about it now, the scariest scenes in the movie are Golden Freddy. I think Golden Freddy really steals the show, especially when he's in the house. I love the scene when Aunt Jane does like the mimic pose and then goes and sits down and watches some TV, and then the camera pans around and you just see Golden Freddy standing there. Or when Abby runs out in the hall and she's like, Freddy, and you just see him standing at the end of the hall staring like just straight down. I think Golden Freddy really sold those scenes. Those are probably the scariest scenes in the movie. I think more of that, potentially even like scarier, could have worked really, really well for the movie on the whole. So movie scary wise, it ain't very scary. And then kind of just to wrap some things up here, the lack of more classic FNAF elements is really shocking to me. I mean, we get some hints. We get the FNAF 1 jump scare mixed with the Foxy hum and the Foxy run down the hallway part when he runs down and he chases that one guy who can't get out of the door. The one lady's brother, when they all break into the place, you know, and he like runs down the hallway, they do the FNAF 1 jump scare sound there. I think that works. I like that scene. I think that all kind of ties together nice. I like the camera angle when it's just the 3 animatronics standing on the stage. I think that works. But outside of that, there's a real lack of classic FNAF 1 elements in the movie. I think there could have been a lot more. And so that's going to obviously be a big thing that I will want to do with this rewrite. So I think that was a big lack of initiative, I guess, on the writer's part of not adding more of these scenes into the movie. And then last up on the things I didn't like, the dialogue. I think on the whole, it's not bad. Most of it's fine. But the William Afton dialogue, I don't know who they have writing dialogue for William Afton. It's been happening since Pizza Sim. Whoever they have doing this just needs to be stopped. They need to be stopped and just put in their place of stop writing William Afton like he's some goofball. I mean, dialogue in the movie when he's getting confronted by all the animatronics and he's like, look at you, look how tiny you are, how like worthless you are wretched, rotten little beasts. And I think Matthew Lillard performs it fine, but like, who says that? Like, that's just weird. That's just a weird thing to say. To me, it's on par with the whole like Scrab Trap, how could I resist a promise such as this? It's just weird. Who talks like that? Like, give me some more natural dialogue. He talks more natural in the rest of the movie. Even in scenes prior to that, when he's like confronting Vanessa, he talks pretty normal there. Why can't you just have him talk more normal when he's being evil William Afton? It ain't that hard. So I think William Afton dialogue especially, but just some other points in the movie, could have been more improved if they maybe didn't have the same people, you know, whoever they have. I know it's not the same guy, but like whoever keeps making William Afton sound like a big goofball, maybe if they just didn't have that person keep doing that, I think we'd be fine. Which is, it may be Scott Cawthon, it might not be, I don't know, but just make him not a goofball. Make his dialogue more natural, I guess, is a big thing. And that really wraps it up for things that I like and I didn't like from the movie. So now we'll move into the rules, kind of go over some rules, since you don't usually do this anymore. So it's kind of the first time in a while, but we'll go over some of these things that I need to follow while doing my rewrite, because I don't want to just go through and be like, well, I'm gutting the whole movie and I'm making an entirely new thing, because I feel like that doesn't really live to the, I guess, core of what I like to do, which is take things and tweak them to be a little bit better than just basically making up my own stuff to replace it, if that makes sense. So just take what's there, polish it up, clean it up a little bit, and then call it a day. And I think the rules that I have here will help me achieve that. So the first major rule is that all actors and actresses in the movie will stay the same, except for one, which we'll talk about later when we get to the story. Except for one character, every other character will be the same and portrayed by the same people. Now, there might be some characters removed or stuff like that, but there won't be any like, well, I'm gonna get rid of Josh Hutcherson as the main character and like get a different actor in there or stuff like that. Like, there's not gonna be any of that. All the actors and actresses would be the same. Another point here, kind of tying into the previous one, is that I can't have people who weren't in the original movie just show up anyway. Big example, I can't have a Markiplier cameo in my rewrite. Like, I can't write him in there because he didn't make it into the first movie because he couldn't. So he's not going to be here. And that's kind of gonna be a big thing with this, is I can't just like throw random people in here. I can't have like a Scott Cawthon cameo because he's not here, so I can't just do that. However, I still can keep the previous cameo since they're in the movie. And kind of moving away from characters and into more of like story elements that I need to follow, I have to keep the same overarching story elements and points here in order to maintain the same level of, I guess, story that we have in the original movie. So for example, Aunt Jane is still going to be here, and she's still going to be trying to take Abby away, though it is going to be a little bit different, but that base story element will still be here, along with like the robots acting like kids at times. That's got to stay here because it is an important element in the movie, so it's an important element for me to keep here. And there's other stuff here too, but I'm not going to ramble on about that. And last but not least for this entire section and for these rules, I want to say it here, I want to say it clear, for my movie rewrites, because presumably I'll end up doing one for FNAF 2 at some point in the future, but I don't know at this point. For the movie rewritten universe, there are going to be no robot people. So Vanessa's not a robot. There are no robot people in my rewrite or in my rewrite movie universe. That's not going to happen. So there's no robot people. I just want to make that a blanket statement here. Anyway, with that said, that about wraps it up for the recap and rules. And so now we'll kind of move into the story section, where I'm going to go through and just sort of read the story from start to end and just basically talk about that going forward from there. So without further ado, again, let's get into the main story and the stuff that I changed. Alright, so as we get into the main story here, since that's what we are going to be rewriting, instead of doing it like I did my novel trilogy rewrites, where I kind of just read through a story from point A to point B and I'm reading it like these events are happening, I think it's probably better if I go through, explain some of the more like changed scenes and kind of just go through the major stuff while also talking about some of these smaller things here and there, but go through from start to end, but actually explain things rather than just reading it like a story. That way you guys can kind of understand why I'm making some of these changes instead of just having to kind of guess as to why I'm doing that. So with that simple explanation out of the way, let's get to the start of our story here, and I'm actually changing the introductory scene. So in the base movie, you have that whole like the night guards trying to escape, and then Foxy puts him in the big torture machine, and then the torture machine kills him. I'm getting rid of the torture machine. I don't think it's necessary, especially for my rewrite here. So that's not going to be here, and instead we're going to put the like the looter, the bandit scene, whatever they're called, the people who go in and they rob the place, that scene, instead of it being like later in the movie, I'm actually moving it to the start here, and that's going to be our introductory scene to Freddy. So they go in and it would be at night, so the location is completely dark and there's no power in the building, so it's like super dark and they're just using their flashlights to look around. Now, most of the actual scenes themselves would be pretty similar, where you get like a guy's going through the kitchen area and then he hears the rattling, he opens the fridge door and the cupcake's there and he's like, what, that's super weird. So most of that would be the same. The difference I'm making for this guy though is that he sees Mr. Cupcake in the fridge and he's like, what the heck? And then he hears the noise behind him and he turns around and there's nobody there. Then he looks back at the fridge, Mr. Cupcake's gone. What the heck happened? Then he'll hear another like mechanical noise behind him and he'll do like a slow turnaround, and then we'll get a jump cut to his perspective, and in the movie it's Chica standing there for like 10 seconds and then Mr. Cupcake jump scares him. Instead here we're gonna get a jump cut to his perspective turning around, and for a split second you see Chica standing there and then it's jump scare, so that it's, instead of you sitting there and being like, oh, I'm getting a wind up to my jump scare, he turns around and then instant jump scare at like when it's dark. That way it's a little bit more scary and it's not just like, oh, I'm seeing Chica in full. It's scarier. So that's I think his name's Carl. I think that's his name, but that's gonna be his scene, so it's gonna be a little bit more updated and a little bit better, more scary. For the other guy, I don't remember his name, the like older dude, and he runs away and then he goes into the closet area and Bonnie's in there and he's the guy who's like, he's right behind me, isn't he? Most of that's probably just gonna stay the same because I find it a little bit kind of funny, to be honest. Like it's a little silly and I can't get rid of that because it's just super funny. So most of that would be the same, except obviously it is darker, so like in terms of like actual lighting it's darker, but most of that's just gonna stay the same because I think it's kind of funny. For the other dude, the like main guy, and he's running away, I think his death isn't terrible either. Like, he's trying to get back into the room, and then Mr. Cupcake attacks, and then he tries to get to the door, and then Foxy does his jump scare thing. I like that. The only difference here where is, instead of him turning around, he just sees Foxy standing at the end of the hall, and then it's like a blink cut, and somehow Foxy teleported halfway down the hallway and is like right in front of him. I'm gonna have it be that he hears Foxy humming, and then he turns around, and immediately Foxy's already sprinting down the hallway doing his jump scare. That way it's another one of those jump cut jump scares to make things actually a little bit more scary, rather than you're getting a build up to your jump scare. Because I have played so many FNAF fan games, when they have a build up to a jump scare, it's not scary. And the jump scares in the movie are pretty much not scary, except for the Balloon Boy ones, but that's because it's completely random. So I think having more of these jump cut jump scares, especially for this scene, would make things a little bit better. So that's his death. And then the last one is the lady, what's her name? Max. She's not actually going to be here. Well, she's in the movie, but her character doesn't partake in this particular scene, because I'm rearranging some of the characters. So instead, there would be some other person here. I know I said I wasn't going to do much like moving people around or adding too many people, but I need her in another place, and I need also somebody here. So there would just be some other random person here that would get the Freddy kill, because I like the Freddy kill. That's got to stay here. In a perfect world, that would not have been spoiled by advertising. So there would be the hand reaching out Freddy chomp jump scare. I like that, so that's going to stay. It's just not going to be Max, I think is her name. That's just not going to be her death. It's going to be some other person. So that's the opening scene to kind of get us into the mood of Freddy's. It would probably play a little quicker than it does in the base movie, where it's kind of more drawn out. So here it would probably play a little quicker, but it's supposed to give us this sense of these animatronics are dangerous without having to throw some guy in a torture chair. I think it kind of just works a little bit better. So we go from there to the flashback point with Mike when he's at the mall. Except here, I think actually in the movie he has the flashback and then he goes to the mall and then he has this whole freak out. So here, the next scene after it would be the flashback of Mike and Garrett, and I'm changing the location. So in the movie they're in some like park, and then Athen just drives away. Here I'm changing it so that they were actually at like some local mall, and then he loses Garrett there, and the last thing he remembers is seeing Garrett walk off with some other like random guy, and he's like, what the heck? So it's sort of the same premise, it's just not at some random park. And I'm changing it to a mall because I'm keeping Mike's mall fight with that random dad, and he like beats him up in the fountain. That's staying here, but I want to give it more context because it's like, hey, my brother got kidnapped in a mall. This guy looks like he's just taking some random kid in a mall. It connects a little bit more, I think. So that's what I'm trying to go for there. So he has this flashback, and then we get to him living his life. He has the fight in the mall. He goes to Steve Raglan. He gets the job. That whole thing is pretty much the exact same. Also, yes, Matthew Lillard will still do the purple guy pose where he like sticks his arm out and it looks like he's doing the purple guy sprite pose. He'd still do that. So that whole sort of introductory part is pretty much the same, minus where Garrett gets kidnapped. But other than that, it's all like the exact same. So he gets the job, he heads home, and then he meets Max there, who's babysitting Abby. He talks to her about babysitting Abby at night because he has this job. I am changing it slightly. He accepts the job right away. So that's not really a major change, but he accepts the job right away. He asks Max if she can, babysit a little bit longer. He'll pay her extra. She says sure. So he heads off to his, new job. So Mike goes off to Freddy's, right? And he goes there, he opens up, he takes a look around. He's kind of like, oh, this place is kind of spooky. He does move the curtain and he sees the robots and he's like, whoa, that's scary. And he kind of just does his night one stuff. I mean, night one's never usually that bad in any of the games. So in the movie, it's really not going to be that bad either. So he just does his thing. He looks around, does whatever, calls it a day, right? He does his little sleeping thing where he dreams and he has he's trying to remember Garrett when he gets taken, and then he turns around and he sees the 5 missing kids like it is in the movie, just again, it's in the mall rather than in some park. But all that is the same for the most part, right? He does his thing, he does whatever. And then he wakes up, he's like, oh, jolly, that was a odd sleep. And then he goes home. So that's like his whole night one routine. It's pretty much just the same. with some minor cosmetic changes. So then he calls it a day, he goes home, right? We move to the next scene, and this is the, like, lawyer scene when Aunt Jane's, like, weeping because, oh, Mike just doesn't take care of Abby. I am keeping that in here. I brought that up already. I want to keep Aunt Jane in the whole subplot there, but she is a little bit less evil. She's not like, oh, I'd kill him if I could. She's not that bad. She's not great. She's not good. She's just not like super villain evil. So they have that whole social worker scene. Mike's like, I have a job, so I should be fine. But then Aunt Jane's like, the job's not good enough, blah, 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 blah. And so that scene's like almost the exact same, just again, some minor cosmetic tweaks to some of the wording. So they kind of do their talking. I'd also keep what's his name, Doug, the weird lawyer dude. He was kind of funny, so I'll keep him in there too. So then Mike goes home, and then Abby asks about Freddy because Mike's working there. So she's like, hey, what's the place like? You know, you were there, you were working, what's it like? And Mike says it's just some old, you know, rundown restaurant. There's not much to talk about. And they kind of just keep talking about Freddy's. He doesn't really do much. He sits around till the night ends. Sort of like on a fun play, how some of the early nights in FNAF, you just sit around and wait for the night to end where nothing happens. That's how he kind of explains it. So then he calls up Max again, being like, hey, I gotta go back to my job. Do you mind babysitting again? She's like, sure. She comes over. He's like, cool. He heads out. They call it a day. So he heads off and does his night 2 routine. He does everything the same, right? He looks around, and then he does the little sleeping pill so that he can get back to the dream and try to remember. And then he sees the missing kids again. And this time he catches up to, this is where a little bit of the actor changing I brought up comes into play. So he catches up to a young girl with black haired pigtails, and she's also wearing the kind of classic Cassidy outfit. And yes, I'm having Cassidy in here and not blonde hair boy, potentially male Cassidy, whoever he is, the blonde hair kid. I'm swapping him out with typical, how people typically imagine Cassidy, just because I think it works a little bit better, and she might have a bit more of a connection to Abby in this movie. We'll get to that a little bit later. So she's here, he catches up to her, and then when she turns around, she does the whole like scream where her face is like pale, and then she's got the solid dark eyes and the tears going down. It would look a little bit better than it does in the main movie when I think Fritz does that. It would look a little bit better than that, but it's pretty much the same sort of idea. So then Mike wakes up and he kind of gets like thrown to the floor. Cause like, oh, scary dream. So he wakes up, he looks around, and then he doesn't really see anything. And then he hears the buzzer from the front door, and he sees Vanessa standing outside. He lets her in, they do the talking, everything's the same. Here though, she, you know, talks about the 5 missing kids that went missing there, all that kind of stuff. It's all pretty much the same as I think typical night 2 in the movie is. So she just explains everything. He calls it a day. They go home. Bada boom, bada boom, night 2 is pretty much done. So as they leave though, she does tell him to be careful about Freddy's because things get a little bit quirky there. And then they leave. Mike goes home, talks to Max about the next night, and being like, hey, can you come back for the next night? You know, like, can you just keep babysitting at night? And Max is like, sorry, pal, I can't, because I'm actually going to be, you know, leaving for a bit of time, actually. You know, like, I got to head out of town. I'm going to be gone for a while. I can't keep babysitting. I'm going to be unavailable. And then later we'd also get, like, kind of right after this scene, we get that diner part where Max goes in and I think her brother was there. The diner scene, the Sparky's diner scene, where Matt Pat shows up and he does the whole like, well, that's just a theory. That's all here, except it's revealed that Aunt Jane kind of bought out Max to be like, hey, I'll pay you this amount of money if you just leave Mike alone and never talk to him again. So she kind of gets bought out to stop babysitting, so that Mike has to take Abby to work, so that it would look bad to like the courts because he's taking his sister to work. It's just another way to undermine him without like trashing the place and without killing him. So it's just more of that side plot kind of stuff. So now that he's left without any other options, Mike has to take Abby along to Freddy's. And of course, like in the movie, she finds it super fun. She's like, oh, this is super cool. Also, like in the movie, they both doze off. And then this time we see Mike's dream. we're back in his dream and he's in the mall again, except it's empty. There's no other like people around. The memory's changed. The mall's dead empty, except for Cassidy, who's standing there. And he kind of asks her like, hey, what's going on? Clearly, you know, you're influencing the dream somehow. Do you know who took Garrett? Can you help me out? And she actually like talks to him. She's like, yeah, I can help you out, but I need something in return. You need to give me something in return in order for me to give you the information that you seek. And Mike's like, heck yeah, I'll give you anything if you can give me information on who took Garrett. So this change is because in the movie, there's the part, I think it's like night 4 or like leading into night 5, I don't remember. But there's a scene where Mike is like in the dream and he talks to blonde-haired kid, and blonde-haired kid's like, we can give you the reality where Garrett's not taken, you know, as long as we have Abby. And Mike's like, sure, take her, I'd stay here. And I'm like, wow, that's not great. And I know that's supposed to be the point. Like, the point is that Mike's like, you know, oh, I want Garrett back so bad that I would give up anything. But I think the fact that they straight up ask for Abby and he's like, yeah, sure, just take her, I want this dream, it's a really bad look for a main character. Like, it just seems like something he wouldn't do, because like clearly he cares about his sister and like he wants to make sure that she's safe. But it just seems like a really, like, I don't know, it just seems like out of left field that he would do that. So that's why here I'm having it a little bit early on so that there's more like weight behind it, and that he words it in a sense of like, I'll give you anything, so that it does imply that they're like, hey, we want Abby at some point. But he doesn't word it that way. So because he worded it sloppily, then they can use that against him. But he doesn't just straight up say like, yeah, just take my sister, I want this dream. I think it just works a little bit better. So that's the deal that they make. She's like, I'll give you the information at the end of the week. You know, give me some time. I gotta, you know, go through the paperwork. I gotta find everything. I'll give you the information at the end of the week, but you better have our payment by then as well. And Mike's like, cool. You know, I'd rather have it now, but you know, so I'll just wait around till then. And he agrees to the deal. So then he shoots awake after the dream and he hears Abby screaming. He runs out to the main area and it's basically the same thing as the movie. He picks up the chair and he's gonna hit Freddy, and then Freddy walks up and Mike does the whole like Willem Dafoe. He's like looking up and he's super scared. That whole thing's the same. Abby's like, it was so fun to hang out with the robots. They all are like super happy. Mike gets introduced to all of them, and that whole scene, because I liked that scene, it was nice. So that whole thing kind of just stays the same. So then the shift is over, they all go home, and once they get home, Mike brings Abby to bed, puts her to bed, and he notices a drawing, this is kind of like straight out of the movie, of the Garrett getting taken. Now in the movie, obviously it's the car, and here it would be like the person walking with Garrett. It's just a different scenery, right? But it's the same premise. He sees the picture. He also sees some pictures of the ghost kids, and he kind of puts together that maybe these friends of hers that she's been seeing, which was in the movie as well. I'll bring it up more in a little bit, but that was in the movie. And then I kind of just didn't talk about it early on. But yeah, she like sees friends, and it turns out to actually be the missing kids. So he sees those pictures, and a little bit later, once Abby wakes up, but she's still in her room, Mike goes over and he talks about the pictures to her. Obviously, like in the movie, he's not upset or anything. He's just talking to her about what these mean, and she explains them. She goes through everything, and then Mike does his like, hey, next time we're there, can you ask your friends about if they know anything? He's trying to circumnavigate their deal because he wants the information as soon as possible. So he's like, hey, if you can get any information, you want to, tell me, and then that way I don't have to go through on this deal. So he asks her that. She's like, sure. And then he leaves. And I think this would be another one of those like kind of cool, creepy moments. So the camera would be set up looking into Abby's room, and you can just see the end of her bed and Abby sitting at her desk. Mike would walk past the camera. Nobody's sitting on the end of Abby's bed. The second Mike walks past the camera, Cassidy's sitting on the end of Abby's bed, to show that she was there the whole time. And it is insinuated in the movie that that's kind of how it works, because at the start of the movie, like the very start, Mike sits down on her bed and Abby's like, you're sitting on my friend. And then Mike's like, well, there's nobody there, so you're crazy. Which also then does imply that he is actually sitting on one of the ghost kids. Kind of weird. But here, I think it would be a cool way to continue that. So that scene would happen at the start, and then here he walks past and it shows that she's actually like here the whole time. So just another cool, creepy way to have Cassidy be doing stuff. And that's kind of it for this scene. They're going to get ready to go on for night 4. So Mike and Abby go back to Freddy's, and they are greeted by Vanessa, who is there waiting for them. And she's like, I'll join you guys for tonight. I got nothing going on. You know, police scanner's kind of quiet. There ain't anything going on here, so I'll join you. So fun ensues. They all hang out. You know, it's the whole Faz gang. Let's go, Faz gang. They're all hanging out. They probably wouldn't build a fort, but who really knows? They might still in this version. But they're all just hanging out because as much as people didn't like the animatronics acting like kids, the fact is that they are being controlled by ghost kids, which would mean that they would act like kids. I actually have no problem with it. I think the execution in the movie is a little bit odd, but I don't have an issue with them acting like kids because they are supposed to be. So I don't mind that. And I think having established them already being a lot scarier at the start of the movie, I think it works a little bit better here. So they all hang out, and then Vanessa and Mike would still go to that back area. They see the spring lock. She tells them about the spring locks. She gets a little bit hostile towards Mike because Mike's asking so many questions. While that's happening, we get a shot of Abby asking the ghost kids about Garrett. She's like asking about them, and then Cassidy would show up and say that she can't share this information with Abby right now. You know, like it's not within their right to share this information with her. And then Abby would be like, okay. And it would sort of start to build up that Cassidy and the missing children are now kind of a little bit suspicious towards Mike because they're realizing that he's trying to like the globe. He's trying to circumvent their deal. So they're realizing that, and so now they're a little bit more suspicious of him, which they already were in the first place. Now they're even more. So then they wrap up the night. Everybody was happy. They all go to leave. And then as they leave, Vanessa would tell Mike that he needs to just quit his job. There's no like, don't bring Abby. Well, that's also here. But she just tells him to quit his job. Stop working here. Go find somewhere else to work. Never come back to this place. And never take Abby back here. Like, she's very upfront about just never come back to Freddy's anymore. Don't do it. Don't come back to Freddy's. And Mike's a little bit like, that's odd. And Abby's like, oh, she just doesn't like you. And they kind of just call it a day. And then they all go home. And as they're driving home, Mike is like, hey, Abby, did you get any information from your friends? And she's like, yeah, no. And Mike's like, well, it was worth a try. They get home and both of them are like kind of super tired. So Abby goes to bed and then Mike kind of crashes on the couch. And he re-enters the dream and he sees that it's just Cassidy there again. And she asks if he still wants the information about Garrett. And he's like, well, duh, yeah. So she tells him to return to Freddy's and just to get there as soon as possible. And to bring Abby. Mike says no, that he won't bring Abby, but he will go back to the location. And Cassidy's kind of like, ooh, we would really want Abby there, but okay. And so then he's like, cool. So Mike wakes up and he knows what he has to do. He has to go back to Freddy's, but he won't bring Abby back because he doesn't want her to get in danger. So he calls up Aunt Jane. That whole thing from the movie is still here. He calls her up. Abby's like super upset that he did that. And it's like, oh, well, I don't like you anymore, Mike. And then Aunt Jane's like, oh, she's crazy. And then Mike drives off. He goes off to Freddy's. So then he gets to Freddy's. He does his little sleeping pill things to get back in the dream. And that's when he sees the 5 missing children waiting for him. Cassidy asks if he's good to go forward with the deal. And he's like, yeah, I'm good. And she asks for the payment first. We'll give you the information if you give us the payment first. And Mike asks like, all right, well, what do you want? And they say they want Abby. And Mike refuses. And Cassidy's like, yeah, I kind of suspected that. So the deal's off. And now all the missing children basically just beat up Mike like they do in the movie. So he gets attacked by Foxy, right? Like, but this is all in the dream. So he gets attacked by Fritz. There would be an insinuation here. So the Gabriel would like go and like give Mike an uppercut. So there'd be an insinuation that Freddy Fazbear himself just uppercut Mike like in real life, since what the kids are doing happens in real life. I think it'd be kind of funny. So he gets beat up. He gets super beat up and he like kind of falls out of the dream and back into reality. And he stumbles his way towards the door like he does in the movie. And he's slipping in and out of consciousness. And as he tries to go through the door, he hears an ominous laugh from behind him, and he turns to see the silhouette of a bear animatronic, but it's missing an ear, and he just sees the blue eye staring back at him. So it's Golden Freddy. And it's to insinuate that Cassidy is actually more active in things here, and so is Golden Freddy. So he sees Golden Freddy's silhouette, and he tries to get through the door, and then right as he kind of turns around and sees it, the door like opens, he falls through the door, and Mike fades out of consciousness. So after Mike fades out of consciousness, we would get an exterior shot of their house. So it's just the neighborhood, and we get to see their house, and it's at night, and the camera would be kind of set up in like a middle of the street perspective where we get to see their house. There's nobody standing there. A car drives past the camera, and then we see Cassidy standing outside of the house. We then hear some knocking, like somebody's knocking on the front door, but it turns out to just be Aunt Jane knocking on Abby's door, being like, you gotta come out eventually, and Abby doesn't say anything. So then Aunt Jane does her whole thing where she walks back, she does the mimic pose, she sits down on the couch, and we get that cool panning shot of Golden Freddy going around. I love that. It's super creepy, so we'd get that panning shot with Golden Freddy standing behind her. It's super cool. Abby would hear the thunk. She comes out of her room. She sees Freddy standing there. She runs up to be like, hey, it's you, Freddy. And then Cassidy would come out here and say, like, in the movie, it's like, not Freddy. Come on down to Freddy's with me. Here, I think it would be a fun way to include some Golden Freddy lore. So Abby runs down, Freddy, Cassidy shows up, and she'll just go, no, it's me. It's me, because that's Golden Freddy. I just think it'd be kind of fun. And it's a cool way to include a catchphrase that's not, I always come back, because I feel like you can't really use that. So it's me reference, and Cassidy's like, come on down to Freddy's with us. And that whole thing would play out the same. Abby goes to leave. They get in the cab, because I think that's kind of funny. So they do that whole thing, and all of that is the same. So Mike would wake up and find himself in the police depot with Vanessa. This whole thing would be like pretty much the exact same. They have their conversation. Vanessa's like, oh, my dad's William Afton, and he's really evil. And that everything's just the exact same. And she gives him all the stuff. She gives him a flashlight. She gives him a taser, all the stuff he needs. So he goes back to Freddy's using the police car, and he sees Foxy escorting Abby to the back room. You'll understand why I'm changing who's taking her back there in a minute. So Foxy's leading her back there, and on stage, Bonnie and Chica are rocking it out. Freddy's nowhere to be found, but Bonnie and Chica are rocking it out on stage. So he does the same water trick. He shocks both Chica and Bonnie. They fall over. Mr. Cupcake maybe gets like comedically thrown in the air because he's on the platter, so he goes like flying into a wall or something. So they all fall over. He goes back to the back area. He shoots Foxy in the exposed endoskeleton rather than in an eye to like shock him, and he falls over. He saves Abby, and both of them go to leave the back room area. So as they're leaving, the power to the building goes out, and Mike's like, oh, I knew the power's faulty. We gotta go change it. It's in the main office. So he turns on one of the flashlights. They head down one of the hallways to get to the office, but that's when the camera would turn around and reveal the silhouette of Freddy Fazbear with his iconic, just the white pinprick eyes that he has when he's staring at you on the cameras in FNAF 1. I think that was a reference that was sorely lacking in the movie, and this way we can have at least some acknowledgement of it. A lot of people wanted me to include this in here. A lot of people wanted it in the main movie, so I'm putting it here. He has the pinprick eyes, and he's just staring at Abby and Mike as they run away. So the two make it back out to like the main dining room area, and they're like, all right, right over there is the hallway to the office. We just gotta go that way. And as they take like a step forward, they hear the sound of a music box winding up. And then just then, like some almost like floodlights, they get lit up in this like silhouette of light, and they turn to see Freddy Fazbear with his face illuminated from the inside and the Tornado March playing. It's the power out sequence, which was also sorely lacking in the movie. I think this would have been an incredible sequence to have here. So they need to get to the office. The whole building is without power, and Freddy's doing his whole Freddy March, the do, you know, he's doing that, and his face is lit up just like classic FNAF, and they got to make it to the office. But like in FNAF 1, Freddy looks like he can appear anywhere at any time. He moves really fast. So they take a step to try to go to the office, but Freddy moves in front of them really fast, like almost like he's teleporting. He's not, but he's just really fast. And so they keep trying to have to like avoid him, and eventually they're able to get around him and get to the office. He's like in hot pursuit of them, but they get into the office. Mike pushes himself up against the door, and you hear Freddy banging on the other side of the door, and it would sound like the classic FNAF 1 door banging noise. And he's like, Abby, turn the power on. So Abby turns the power on, and then the whole building lights up, and after a few more knocks on the door, it stops, and Freddy is seemingly gone. Mike and Abby are kind of suspicious about the fact that Freddy stopped, but they open the door, he's not there, and they make their way back out to the main dining room area, and they head over to the main like doorway arch. And then we get the shot of Springtrap entering the scene. Well, Afton. He's not quite Springtrap, but I don't really know what to call him. I guess Afton works. So Afton shows up, and he does this whole like, like the super creepy, right? And he turns the corner. Except here, instead of it just being Mike, it's Mike and Abby. So Mike's like, Abby, get the heck out of here, because it's William Afton. Mike and Afton get in their little fight. He shoves him across the room. He gets kicked in the face, right? And he's down on the ground. And then Abby runs back over, and she's like, Mike, no. And Afton's got the knife, and he's like, well, cool. I get to kill all three of you. You know, I killed your brother. Now I get to kill both of you. And he's going to go in to kill both of them. And then we hear Vanessa telling him to stop. So I'm changing this particularly to have Vanessa's triumphant moment of, I'm here to save the day, be her confronting Afton. Because the whole police station thing is like, I can't be there when Afton's there. I can't confront him. And Mike's like, you're going to have to eventually or whatever. And then he leaves. But then in the movie, it's like she saves Abby, and Abby's like, thank you for saving me. And she's like, go help your brother. And she's like, are you going to come with us? And she's like, no, I can't. I don't know what she expects Abby to do against Afton. But like, she's like, I can't confront Afton. And then all of a sudden out of the blue, she just does. So I think here, having her triumphant return be confronting Afton immediately kind of raises the stakes of her character by being like, she was like super struggling, I can't confront him. And now her big return is confronting Afton. I think just thematically, it works a little bit better. So she does her whole thing. She's like, stop, put the knife down. Afton's like, oh, you're not gonna shoot me. And then she shoots him, and he's like, ouch, you shot me. Like, that was crazy. And then he goes up to her, and then he does the whole, like, you had two jobs, you know, keep him in the dark, and then, you know, lure him in or whatever the things were. And she's like, that's two jobs. And then he, like, starts choking her out. I thought that was super funny, because there's all the memes of Mike doing that. I think it's funny because it actually happens in the movie, because she's like, that's two jobs. And then Afton's just immediately like, yeah, okay, no, I'm not having any of this. So he does that whole thing. And then everything here plays out pretty close to the same. Mike's like, Abby, you have to show the kids, like the ghost kids, what really happened. So she draws the picture, she hangs it up on the wall. Afton's like, what are you doing? And then Vanessa's like, you can't hurt her. And then Afton stabs her, and he has his moment of regret when she's like, Dad, and she falls over, and he's like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. All right, well, back to trying to kill this kid. So he turns around and he's gonna kill her, and then it's revealed that it was actually William Afton that killed the missing kids, and he's not friends with them. He killed them. And then the ghost kids turn on him, and he's like, oh, what? Move, right? Get out of my way. And the spotlights turn on, all that kind of stuff. But here's where it gets a little bit different. In the movie, he kind of has this like really odd supervillain monologue. Again, I brought it up in the dialogue part, but like the whole, you know, look how tiny you are, how worthless you are. And then he's like kind of just talking weird. Like, it's not Matthew Lillard, it's the, you know, actual like the writers. It's just weird. I don't know what they're thinking. So here it'd be slightly different. It'd probably be the same idea, but just worded better. I can't word it better off the top of my head here, but it would be worded a little bit better. He's kind of like talking to them about how like, I created you, you know, you guys were nothing, but then now you were given new life, right? Like, I gave you guys life. These are new lives that I gave you. And then the actual Springlock scene is a little bit different. So instead of it just being like the cupcake decides, I'm gonna be here, and I'm gonna you know, just rip out part of his suit, and then Afton's like, youchers, that's really hurting me. Ooh, I think that stabbed into my stomach. Oh, I always come back. And then he kind of just falls over, because it's really weird. Here it's a little bit different. So he's kind of spinning in a circle, not like not like a cartoon, like spinning super fast, but he's kind of surrounded by the 4 animatronics, and he's like looking around, and he's a little bit scared, right, because he's surrounded by these guys. And then he would turn and he would see Golden Freddy standing right in front of him with a jump scare. It would be another one of those like snap cut jump scares. So we would get Afton's perspective, and I don't know if it would be like just like a Golden Freddy jump scare from like FNAF 1 where it takes up the entire screen, or if it would be something like FNAF 2 where it's just the face zooms in. It would be some sort of Golden Freddy jump scare, and then Afton would be like, whoa, and he'd like stumble back and set the spring locks off. And then there would be some screaming. It wouldn't be like the stuff we hear in like the VHS, you know, analog horror stuff where it's like really gruesome, because it is still supposed to be a PG-13 movie. So there's not going to be like gruesome. It's not going to be like blood spraying everywhere and he's like, oh, and he's like screaming super crazy loud or anything like that. But it would be a little bit more realistic than just like, oh, ouch, that hurts. So he's getting spring locked and he's kind of freaking out, and he falls down on his knees, and then he kind of just falls over a little bit more, and then he looks up at the animatronics and they're all glaring down at him, but he looks up at them, and then he focuses in. He stops screaming, and you kind of see him like biting down a little bit more, like kind of trying to fight through the pain, and he sits back up on his knees and he puts the helmet back on. He doesn't say I always come back. He doesn't do any of that. He just puts the helmet back on and he accepts his fate. It's supposed to be that he's a little bit, you know, more confident in what he's doing, because I got the impression that in the movie he knew what he was doing. If you put the whole costume back on and you get spring locked, you're going to possess the suit. I think that's a creepy idea that could work. Like, this Afton knows that if he gets spring locked and the suit comes back on, he'll control it. So he's more prepared. I think that's a cool concept to go with. It was just, I don't even know if that's what they were trying to do, but I think it's a cool concept that you can actually work with this scene. So that's why I wanted to make it like a little bit more classic spring locky, where he's like, ow, this is actually really bad. And then he kind of focuses in and goes, wait a minute, the kids possess the suits. If I do this right and I die here, I could possess this suit, but it needs to be complete. So he puts the helmet back on to complete the suit, so that when he does get fully spring locked and he dies in the suit, he'll be able to come back as Springtrap. I think it just kind of works a little bit better. So then the whole rest of the thing happens, right? The whole building starts to collapse. They drag Afton off. Mike and Abby get Vanessa out of there, and they bring her to the hospital, right? We get the sort of like, a little bit of time has passed. Mike and Abby visit Vanessa in the hospital. They go home. They have their little like talk, their little laugh. They're having a little bit of fun. But what would be slightly different with this ending scene is, in the movie, there's a shot, like an exterior shot of them in the window, and they're like, oh, we're having mac and cheese, and everything's like super happy. But then here, we would get that same shot, but then it would be sort of like a zoom out over the shoulder shot, where we would see Cassidy standing outside their house staring in at them, to insinuate that Cassidy is still out there. She's still doing things, and she's not exactly happy with either of them. We would then get our shot of Freddy's, and in the movie, it's the shot where, not Cassidy, blonde-haired kid, which might be Cassidy. The equivalent to Cassidy, blonde-haired kid, is staring at Afton, and Afton's like, oh, help me, please. I actually don't mind that scene, but I'm changing it a little bit here. So instead, we would get a shot of Freddy's, and it would kind of go through the hallways, and we would hear like this sort of kind of gross like squishing noise, where it's like the spring locks are squishing Afton's body, because like it's grotesque noises. So then you kind of get that, and then we would zoom into whatever back room Afton was shoved in, and we would see him propped up against a wall, and he's like kind of twitching nonstop. Like the arm kind of shoots out, the legs are kind of like trembling, his other arm shoots, his head is twitching, and it would zoom in until we zoom in fully on and like into the suit eye, like the actual animatronic eye of the suit, and then the credits would roll, and it would be the FNAF 1 song playing as the credits, like in the movie. And I wanted to do this because it would be such a cool kind of slight recreation of the FNAF 3 trailer, where Afton's like twitching against the wall and it zooms in on his eye. I think it'd be super cool to have that here as like, that's the finale scene for the movie, because it's like Springtrap's gonna come back. I think that'd be cool. So that's really about it for the whole movie, and all of the writing and all the changes and that kind of stuff. So that's really about it. Alright, well, I hope that you enjoyed the video and everything that it had to offer. It was a bit of an undertaking to have to come up with ideas for rewriting it. I know that a large chunk of it was just the same as the base movie, because honestly, I enjoyed the base movie, but I hope that the changes I did come up with were at least understandable, and I think since I explained them, I'm hoping you guys understood why I made some of these changes a little bit more than some of my other rewrite content. So again, super big project, and I just hope that it turned out pretty well for you guys. And as we kind of wrap things up here, I would like to give some special thanks to people. Now, there wasn't any other help on this video, not that that's bad, I'm just saying I didn't have anybody else collab on this video because I didn't think it was overly necessary for this one, but I'd still like to give some special thanks to people who just support the channel and that I have done collabs with in the past. So I just want to give a shout out to the Baldwin Birds 2, Solid Silver, and Luke for supporting the channel and for collabing in the past and just stuff like that. So I just want to give a special thanks to you guys for just sticking around and, you know, helping me out when I need it. So thank you very much. And as we continue to wrap up, we will do our shameless plugs like we always do. So go check them out. I got like the Instagram, Patreon, second channel, channel membership, a whole bunch of stuff down below. So go check all of that out if you want to. But speaking of channel membership stuff, you actually get some fun perks for being a member. You get some little 8-bit emojis made by yours truly. I'm trying to get some more member only like video content, but I'm still kind of working on that. And the last major thing you get for being a channel member is a shout out in every video. So here is the shout out to my current channel members. Thank you guys so very much for being my members. It really does just mean a lot to me, so thank you so much. And here is your video shout out. And with that, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. And for your questions of the day, question number 1, what did you think of my movie rewrite? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What did you think? And question number 2, who was your favorite character from the first Five Nights at Freddy's movie? And you cannot say any of the animatronics because I'm not including them here. So who is your favorite human living person who's not a spirit character in the FNAF 1 movie? So answer both of those down below if you made it this far in the video. And with that, I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.